Good evening everyone. My name is Shanahan and we're here for a training session on programming requirements in an education and care service. Welcome and thank you for participating tonight. Please ensure you have filled out the attendance sheet. The session will go for approximately 20 minutes. Now for some housekeeping. This is the evacuation procedure, which is out the main door, through into the next room, out the back door and out to evacuation point A, which is at the back of the house. I am the safety officer, so please follow any instructions that I give you in regard to the evacuation procedure. Toilets are out the side door across the room to the door in front of you, and there are hand washing facilities in that area as well. Please turn off your mobile phones or put them on vibrate or silent for the duration of the training session. At the end of the session, could you please fill in the feedback forms and remember to give them to me before you leave. So let's get started. Can everyone see the presentation screen?
Yes.
So tonight we are going to talk about the programming requirements in regard to the national regulations, the early learning years framework, the national quality standards, a service policy, and we're going to discuss your programming documents, and then we'll have a summary at the end of the evening. So what do you know about the requirements of programs and observations and assessments in your service at the moment?
It's compulsory.
Right. Anything else? Anyone know anything else that you have to do?
Child focus.
Follow the child's interests.
Right. So do you know anything about how many times you have to observe or how many times you have to do assessments on the children?
There's no set number, is there? Or is there?
Well, that's what we're going to find out tonight.
I choose to program weekly, but
Right.
that's just how I like to program.
That's how you like to program. All right, then. The National Law, Section 168, says the approved provider of an education and care service must ensure that a program is delivered to all children being educated and cared by that service. It is to be based on an approved learning framework. It is delivered in a manner that accords with the approved learning framework and is based on the developmental needs, interests and experiences of each child. It is designed to take into account the individual differences of each child. If you fail to program, the individual will be fined $4,000. If the service or the scheme fails to ensure that you program, they will be fined $20,000. The national law states that you must program. It does not state how to program, or how often, or state how many observations or assessments. That is entirely up to you. The Early Learning Years Framework states that the children's interests are to be followed, their family culture is to be included in your program, the children's strengths are to be documented, but again, it doesn't state how you are to program. That is entirely up to you. So in actual fact, Patsy's program could be different from your program, Tiff or Kath or Beck. So as long as you program, you stay within the national law and you comply with the Early Learning Years Framework. The The national standards state, again, that it is based on an approved learning framework, delivered in accordance with that framework, based on the developmental needs, interests and experience of each child, and takes into account the individuality of each child. The education program should contribute to the following outcomes. Children have a strong sense of identity. Children are connected with and contribute to his or her world. Children have a strong sense of well-being. Children are confident and involved learners, and children are effective communicators. Again, in all these areas, it doesn't state how you have to program. In a local service policy, it states a program documentation, a program that maximises opportunity for each child's learning, incorporating the early learning years framework principles, practices and learning outcomes through reflection and evaluation. So this is the only document that actually states that you have to reflect and that you have to evaluate your program. And that is come from the service policy.
I thought they meant the same thing. They don't?
Well, the national law states you just have to program.
No, but I mean reflect and
Evaluate.
evaluate. I thought they meant the same
Well,
sort of thing. Is it?
Well, through reflection and evaluation. So reflection would be if,
When you reflect back and think that didn't work or this worked.
that's right, yeah. Whereas evaluate would be if you, are you actually adhering to the early learning years framework? So reflection would be on an experience that you might have put forward. Did it work? How did it go? Did the children like it? Or why didn't they like it? That would be a reflection. Whereas an evaluation would be on your practice of, is my program reflecting the early learning years framework or not? And how can I improve it? That would be an evaluation at this stage. So now we're on to talking about how does your programming relate to the national regulations, the early learning years framework and the national quality standards and the service policy. So looking at your programs, can you see if your program relates to all these points?
Yep, I connect it, link it up, I put the links beside it, what I programmed.
So you, which links are the early learning years
Yeah,
framework or
yeah,
the
the
national quality standards? Or
I do the early years framework
Mhm.
and then I do a couple of the other one.
Quality
National quality standards.
Yep.
Right.
So I don't write down in my program how it relates to the regulations or how it relates to the service policy, just that I'm following, like, I just know that I'm following those. But I
So you
write
don't
them
state
down.
anywhere on your program that it relates to the early learning years framework?
The early years learning framework I do, and the national quality standards, but not service policy or national regs. I don't write them down.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That should be suffice if that if you an accreditation person comes in, that should be suffice that you are documenting that you do relate it to the early learning years framework, because as we have seen before on all the documents that I was reading from, they just state that it has to relate to the early learning years framework and the national quality standards.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore you would comply with that.
Yeah, but something as simple as a national regs is when you write down how many kids you had that day, you've got a ratio of 1 to 4. So you would only have 4 kids written down on your day. So that's reflecting your regulations anyway. Does that make sense? So that's evidence of that happening in your service.
Yeah, that you're complying with the regulations.
And the
Yeah.
same with that the service policy, if you're writing down that this worked, this didn't work, next week I'd rather have that because whatever, or this child couldn't manage that particular thing, I'm going to take them down a notch, or that was too easy for them. That's reflective practice, and that's what
the
service
policy says.
states.
Yes, that's right.
So you're not reflecting it back, but it's just part of what's there.
Yeah, so, but it can be seen in your program. So if an accreditation person came in and they looked at your program, they should be able to see everything that we've spoken about, the national regs, the national law, early learning. Some educators like to document by putting the early learning years framework numbers beside them, and also the national quality standards numbers.
Mine has, we write down what we're doing and whatnot, and then down the bottom of the page it says EYLF 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just a tick box.
Right, so that's the way you do it. Right. So they should be able to see that as Kath said, that as you've got the 4 children stated that on your program, you are complying with the national regulations.
Mm-hmm.
That you're actually programming, so you are complying with the national law that you do
True.
have to program. So you don't actually have to state that on your program. It is more like that you state the early learning years framework requirements and the national quality standards requirements. And as Kath stated before, they will be able to see that you are complying with your service policies just by reading your program and by looking at your environment as well. It's not just all on the programming section. Right, in summary, there is no formal way to program. Each and every one can program in their own way. Some people have a whiteboard with it up, programming. Some people have it in a book, some people have it in a folder. Some people buy standard formats for programming. It doesn't really matter how you do it. What matters is that you do it. Has to relate to the early learning years framework, national quality standards, and your own service policy. You can design your own program, and the latest research now is saying that they would prefer you to design your own program, because it was to be found that everyone was becoming stock standard, whereas if you design your own program, you can put your own feel into it, your own custom designs, and take your program to where you want it to go, instead of just having the normal stock standard format.
I don't mind the stock standard format because it means that I know that I'm ticking all the boxes. If I do my own, I sometimes think that I'm missing out on something that I should have on there that I don't have on there.
Well,
yeah, but some people take more ownership if they've created it. Like you take more ownership and you do it. But I know what you mean.
You
do
what
makes
So
you
it's kind of blending it all to make it work.
The one that Beck has, yes, it's stock standard, but it also has that flexibility to work with whatever kids you've got in care. There's also programs out there that only work for 3-year-olds. Do you know what I mean? And then they can't adapt it to children that have other lesser or higher ability. Whereas the one that Beck has, although that it's a standard form, it has that ability to, you can use it for toddlers, you can use it for older children, or you can, whatever ability the child is.
Yeah, even with designing your own, like I design mine,
Yeah.
but I take more ownership and I find that I feel more of it in because I created it and
Yeah. And you know
I
what
just
works
found,
for you.
yeah,
There is a lot of-
you just
There
change
is
it
a lot of
throughout
sections
the
in
time.
mine that I don't fill out because
No, but
I
you
don't feel
modify
it
it to work for
necessary.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You could take the stock standard program and then you could modify it. So you could use it as a base. For someone, a new educator just starting, could use that as a base to get themselves orientated into the programming way, and then they could actually adapt it to whatever way they want to later on when they become more confident and have more knowledge and have more,
use a computer.
and have more skills. So the base program is very useful. Is very useful for anyone who doesn't have a lot of confidence or who's just starting out as being an educator. That base program will work very well for them. So as long as they take that base program and relate it to the Early Learning Use Framework and the National Quality Standards, and also to your own service policy. And if you have any problems, you can always ask your service provider to help you out with your programming needs.
So because there is no there is no right or wrong way to program,
no,
every
right.
single person from your service provider will program differently.
That's right.
So every time you get a new coordinator, they
Yeah.
give you
I
different
guess they can just
ideas,
give
I
you
think.
ideas, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can work off that.
That's right. And you're free to incorporate those ideas into your program as long as you program. Or you are free to say, no, I'm quite happy how my programming is going at the moment, but I will take that on board and I will think about that, later on. So that, as I said, as long as you comply with all these, you are meeting the programming requirements for a education and care service. Thank you for coming tonight, and please fill out the feedback forms and give them to me before you leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.